Recall from earlier the three principles we discussed that are involved in the acquisition of language and literacy. They were true about this upper half of the schema, the acquisition of language and literacy model, and they're true about the lower half. The first principle is that we must begin with the components that will be connected so that our knowledge of the separate components comes before we can connect those components by making associations between them. In order to associate two things with each other, such as the sound sequence SAM and the written letters SAM, first we have to know about the separate components. The spoken language sounds on the one hand and the written language symbols on the other hand. Then connections can be made, with the bottom-up connections tending to precede the top-down connections. In other words, we first learn to look at the written symbol and make a speech sound, which is the skill of decoding, which is a form of recognition. Then we develop the ability to produce written symbols to represent the words we want to convey, that is, encoding or spelling. This sequence is the second principle, that recognition tends to precede production. Thirdly, making the correct connections is also of primary importance, and unless our connections are correct, it does not matter how quickly we are connecting. The baby in the video spoke with tremendous speed. However, she was not actually speaking or speaking accurately, so that even though her speech sounded automatic, it did not adequately communicate. So, we need to first learn the right connections and then be able to make them right away or automatically. In other words, right comes before right away, or accuracy precedes automaticity. Automaticity, or being able to automatically do one of these things or make one of these connections, will come with repeated exposures and practice in each component and in the connections. So just as these principles apply to the meaningful spoken language components and connections we discussed earlier, they are also true of the written language components and connections. These principles are especially important for teachers. The acquisition of language and literacy model itself and these three principles are useful tools for helping teachers think about their students' struggles and plan their lessons and make many teaching-related decisions. We will talk more about this, but for now, just a taste of how the ALL model can be used to guide our thought processes and ultimately help in our instructional plans or research designs. Readers who do not have a solid knowledge of the code, or who do not apply that knowledge when they are reading to the point that it is automatic, often just jump directly from the written symbols to the whole word. When they don't recognize the word as a whole, they use the surrounding words, the context, that is, the even higher levels, the phrases, clauses, and so on, to help them go back down and determine the word they were not sure of. So making that jump from written symbols straight up to the word as a whole, using context as a crutch rather than as a confirmation of what they decoded, does not lead to maximal reading skills. The notion that it is most beneficial to go from the bottom to the top rather than skipping parts or skipping around has many implications for teaching, which have already been supported by research findings and teachers' experience. Teaching learners to jump to the whole word is less effective than systematically teaching them the code. Details on these implications, findings, and specific methods of teaching the code are provided in other presentations. For now, some good resources are listed on Louisa Moats's webpage, which is just louisamoats.com, LOUISAMOATS.com.